Electric Cafe.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. In this video, I'll be reviewing the last album from Cocteau Twins called Milk and Kisses, and this came out in 1996. And this is the fourth time they've been featured on my channel. I started at a kind of midway point in their career and decided to do Bluebell Knoll first and then sort of go into their later career, and then I'm going to actually go back to their very beginning. And there was a reason why I wanted to do that, because Bluebell Knoll was kind of in the middle of their career. It's kind of one that I felt would set the bar as far as like where I could tell like where a tier would be, and then I could rate everything compared to that. Like I felt like it was a good middle point. I knew it wasn't my favorite album, but I knew it wasn't my least favorite, so I knew that it was like set the bar and kind of give me something to compare to. And I gave Bluebell Knoll from 1988 a 74 out of 100. I think it's a very good album. And then Heaven in Las Vegas I reviewed next, which I gave it 80, which I think is an excellent album, so 80 out of 100. And then Four Calendar Cafe I even liked a little bit more, probably because it was the first Cocteau Twins album that I heard in 1993, and that kind of started my interest in Cocteau Twins. I was a little bit late in hearing them, and so Eveline was the first Cocteau Twins song that I ever heard, so that one kind of holds a special place in my memories, maybe in nostalgia for it. But there's something about Four Calendar Cafe. It's just the songs are a little bit more consistent than Heaven in Las Vegas. I feel like, as far as the production, I feel like Heaven in Las Vegas is like the premier Cocteau Twins sounding album. If you like to see the reviews on those albums, I'll put links above those, so you can, if you want to check out those reviews, you can from the links above as this video goes on. But I just felt Four Calendar was the most consistent, like track-wise. Like there was very few tracks that I rated below a 7. In fact, I think there was one or two tracks in Heaven Las Vegas that sort of got into the 6s, so which kind of hurt the overall score of the album, and it was just so close. And so Four Calendar Cafe may be my favorite Cocteau Twins album of all time. Milk and Kisses is, of course, their last album, and it probably holds the most contention as far as like being a good album, being underrated, or being one of their worst albums. And I say that very lightly, because I think everybody thinks it's still a good album at very least. And it was interesting scoring it, and because I had an idea of what I would score it at the same time. And it still exceeded my expectation a little bit. It has grown on me over the years, and I don't really consider it just as a couple song, really good album anymore. I do feel like it's a little bit more complete album. I do feel like there's some things missing in the album. For me, the big thing is the melancholy. I feel like the melancholy is a little bit missing in this particular album when you compare it to, especially Bluebell Knoll and Four Calendar Cafe. I feel like Heaven in Las Vegas is a little bit more happier, although the songs at the end are a little bit more introspective. But I feel like some of the tracks on Bluebell Knoll are almost like bring me to tears. They're so they can be so melancholy and so emotional. And so I do feel like this album, particularly Milk and Kisses, is a little bit missing in the melancholy, and it could be because at that time it was the last album. Robin Guthrie and Elizabeth Fraser are no longer together. They got together in '89, had a kid. They broke up in 1993, so right after Four Calendar Cafe, and then so this is, Elizabeth Fraser's already found somebody else and had a kid, a second kid with her new boyfriend or new companion at around this time, so maybe she was even pregnant at this time. So that could have been a little strange, kind of getting together and your ex-wife or your ex-girlfriend is now pregnant with somebody else's baby. So there is kind of a feeling that they're kind of doing this maybe to fulfill a contract obligation, which is sort of known as this album, that they needed to complete one more album before before breaking up in 1998, just a few years after this. I think they did a couple concerts after this. And so, that feeling of, because I feel so emotional when I feel so tied to their emotions, especially in the last albums as they're getting together. The last four albums I've reviewed, especially that 88 to 93 period, or even 96, like I do feel like I wouldn't say she's over him or over the relationship, but she does feel a little bit more powerful in this track. In this album, in some ways, as far as like maybe the confidence level is a little higher, maybe the understanding is a little bit higher, and there's definitely the last track. It feels like it's kind of a swan song in a way, because it's the last song I believe they ever wrote. I think they wrote the B-sides for the singles a little bit before this actual album, so maybe it was done at the same time. But in some ways, this kind of feels like, because it's the last album, it does sort of feel like a swan song as far as the last couple of songs on this album. And the last album, the way she sings it, it's really unique. I'm sure maybe it's not intentional, but I feel like she has this like understanding of everything that was going on with them, or this kind of understanding the way she's singing, that she's able to reflect back on their relationship and how difficult it was, or the good and the bad about it, and then having a kid through all that. And so she sings it kind of matter-of-factly. It's really hard to explain, but if you go to the last track, she's singing it very differently than a lot of, maybe any Cocteau Twins song I've ever heard. It seems like she's like kind of talking about, and it's hard because you can't understand, or she isn't really singing in English, so you really can't tell what she's saying, but it does have a feeling like she's reflecting and understanding what happened, and maybe that's the relationship part, and so maybe that's what's not understood. Maybe she is that in touch with her emotions to come back and do an album with him and be able to kind of vocalize what she's feeling as far as like understanding. But it's hard. I would love to interview Elizabeth Fraser and see if I'm sort of on the right side of feeling like I get that in those last couple songs, especially the last song. But I do feel like the melancholy is a little bit missing in here, and the innocence is a little bit missing in this particular album. Other than that, I think the quality of the songs are a little bit less, but I feel like they're there for the most part. I don't think there's really any song that I felt wasn't strong. Maybe just like one. And I'll go song by song here in just a minute, but maybe just one song that I felt wasn't strong, but just the highs aren't there quite in the songs, and they don't really, besides two songs that are my favorite, the rest of the songs don't quite get to the next level as far as consistency across the album, and I do feel like I missed the melancholy a little bit. So those are probably the two drawbacks on this album. If you really like Heaven Las Vegas, you really like Bluebell Knoll and Four Calendar Cafe, or even their earlier stuff. And I run across a lot of Cocteau Twin fans that really like the early period because it's more 4AD sounding. It's more maybe Elizabeth Fraser's voice is more in the background, a little bit more haunting, a little bit more maybe innocent, maybe tucked away in the atmospherics of the guitars and the production, and just maybe a little bit more edge on it. There's some early Cocteau Twins songs that almost remind me of like where Susie and the Banshee might have kind of gone if they did sort of a shoegaze, not knowing it was shoegaze at the time, but if Susie and the Banshee sort of went there, they have a little bit more of a post-punk edge on some of the early tracks. So I run into fans that really love the early period. They love Garland's Head Over Heels, Treasure. And then, I run into fans that really love Heaven Las Vegas and Bluebell Knoll and Four Calendar Cafe. So it seems like a split, and I feel like this album is right in line with the evolution of, and then also thinking about 1996 and the production and the quality of the recording of the album, it fits right in line with Right After Four Calendar Cafe, and I think it's a strong recording. And I think there is one underestimated or underappreciated point about the album, that they didn't go too much into the extreme. And after their longest break in making albums, I feel like, maybe having in Las Vegas and then going to, switching over to Four Calendar Cafe was about a 2-3 year break, and so this one was too. But this one was also kind of after the breakup of Robin and Elizabeth. So maybe this is the longest period between albums, and I feel like they didn't come back together and really try too much. It was an evolution, but it wasn't like them trying too hard or trying too much to sound very different and sort of come with the times. And, there's a lot of music going on from, when they started all the way to 1996, a lot of differences in indie music, and you can feel a little bit of this album kind of go into an indie rock sound. Specifically, one of the rock bridges, the probably the rockiest bridges ever, the first track, and then one of the tracks towards the end has a little bit of an indie sound to it with the guitars. But for the most part, they didn't go to the extreme and trying to sound too different. There is, if you think about the Cocteau Twins and their evolution of their albums, there is a really nice arc between all the albums in a really nice way, especially like the production. But I do feel like, again, the melancholy is missing. I do feel like the songs don't quite have as many and as high as highs as a lot of the other albums do, or as many highs as other albums do. And again, the production is strong though, and I feel it's like right on par with Four Calendar Cafe. So it starts with the first track, Violain. I hope that's how you pronounce it. This song starts like most of their songs. I don't think there's really too much any difference on this song as far as like a lot of sounds vintage kind of Cocteau Twins, but it doesn't quite get to the level of a lot of Cocteau Twins does for me. Although I do think it's a strong opener. I don't think wouldn't say it's the worst album opener for them, but I wouldn't say it's the best one either. I can't say I'm a fan of the way there's a few tracks on this album, this song included. The layering of Elizabeth Fraser's voice, I don't quite think it works for me as well as it could. And there's a time later on the album, a couple times when it does work. And it's when this particular song, Violain, is a good example. She's singing at a high-pitched voice in the forefront, and she's doubling, or I wouldn't say doubling her voice. She's recorded a second track where she's speaking. And so the speaking is in the background and the singing is in the beginning, and it's really kind of distracting and it's kind of messy. And it's a lot better when she's singing or speaking in the foreground, and then in the background it's more of like a background, like an angel, like she's kind of hitting higher pitches and kind of accentuating words and things like that, and not necessarily speaking. It's a little off-putting, and I don't really like the tone of her voice in Violain as far as like being in the background. It feels very muddy, and again, it's a little bit distracting, but still a solid opener. I give it a 6 3/4 stars rating. Can't quite say it's very good though. It's just a little bit off-putting for me, but it's still a really good song. Track number 2 is my second favorite song on the album, Serpent Skirt. Starts out pretty strong. The chorus is just amazing. It sounds like something from Bluebell Knoll. And there's a couple tracks in this album that do sound like older tracks. I don't know if you guys get that too, but there's a few in here that do remind me of Four Calendar Cafe. There's a couple in here that sound like Bluebell Knoll for me. Nothing quite sounds like Heaven Las Vegas. There might be one, but there's a couple, maybe 5 or 6 songs that do remind me of other songs from their career and their last couple albums. Serpent Skirt, though, wow, it's hard. Every time I play this album, again, it's my second favorite song on the album, but every time I play this song, I cannot stop repeating it. It's so funny because I took this CD just recently in my car. My car still has a CD player, and that's probably why I keep it, because it still has an in-dash 6-disc CD changer. And as I love playing CDs in cars and going on trips and stuff like that, and I don't drive too much to work and to visit family or friends around here, so I don't have more than like a 20-minute drive somewhere and a 20-minute drive home, so I can't even really listen to a full album driving around here in one day. But I know that when I pull this album out, because every time I pull this album out and I drive 10 or 15 minutes to somewhere, I can listen to the song 4 or 5 times, and that's what happens. I just put it on constant repeat. I love this song so much. I just love how it goes into the third verse, especially. But that chorus is just so amazing. And the way it goes into the third verse, and then it doesn't go to a third chorus, so it only does the chorus twice in the song. I think that kind of lends itself to being wanted to play more in a row, because you don't get that satisfaction of that third chorus kind of come in and nail it again. But it does it twice, and it's just so beautiful. It's just a great track, and I think really highly of that track. Obviously, 8.25 stars out of 10. I think it's an excellent track, a little bit higher than even excellent. So, really good stuff on that track. Track number 3, Tishbite. Again, not totally fond of the vocal pattern in this particular track. It's rare that I dislike any. I can't even think any album where I would critique Elizabeth Fraser's voice. Obviously, it's angelic and it's so different and unique and beautiful at the same time and emotional, and it's so rare that I say I something in this album with her voice I just don't quite like. There's just a couple tracks. Again, when she sings in the background, when she talks in the background, it's a little odd, by singing in the foreground and talking in the background. And then this one, in Tishbite, I'm not really fond of the vocal pattern that she gives in this track. And in fact, this is my least favorite track on the album. The guitar isn't bad, but just not fond of the layered vocals either in this one. Again, the vocal runs that she does just aren't quite my favorite. It's a happy song, but they generally do better than this, in a lot of ways. Like in some ways it's a subpar song for them, but I still think it's a pretty good song at a 5.5 out of 10. But not one of my favorite tracks, and probably if you looked at my scoring on the last 4 albums that I reviewed, this might be the lowest track of any song on the last 4 albums. I can't remember really any song that I put lower than a 6. I think most, now I can say most, but before I could say all of them were at least a 6 and at least good. But this one falls a little bit below that. And I think it's generally, I don't dislike it at all. Don't get me wrong. It's just, I think it's a little bit below par for what they do and what they can do, what they did do. Track number 4, Half Gifts. Sort of feels like a carnival sound at this track. It's kind of like it almost kind of reminds me a little bit of like Scarecrow, or I'm sorry, not Scarecrow, but the Carousel on Susie and the Banshees Peep Show. Kind of has that kind of, not as creepy or eerie as that kind of carousel sound, but it is kind of has that twinkling, kind of gentle sound of a carnival in this track. And I like how at the very end, the track kind of twinkles out and just kind of fades out. I think that's really unique and really different, and I think it leaves a lasting impression on this track, and it really kind of pushed it over the top for me. I was kind of around a 6.5, almost a 7 on here, and I just love the way it kind of, the last like 30 seconds, the way it worked out and sort of faded out. It's really clever, and I give Tishbite a 7.25 stars. And then there's track number 5, Calfskin Smack. This one and the next one, Rilken Heart, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Both of these next 2 tracks, track 5 and 6, sound very much like 4 Calendar Cafe tracks. As soon as it breaks in on both tracks, I think of these almost, it almost makes me want to break out 4 Calendar Cafe and sort of match which one they sound like, but they definitely sound like 4 Calendar Cafe. In Calfskin Smack, the vocals are layered better in this one. The background is better. it's more higher pitched versus the other one where she's sort of talking in the background. I don't think that really worked for me again. But this one's nice, floaty overall, but nothing fully special on this track. But it's a good song. It's 6.5 out of 10. Track number 6, Broken Heart, I like a little bit better. I really like Elizabeth Fraser's voice in this track. This sounds almost a little bit like Four Calendar Cafe and Heaven in Las Vegas. But the really key to this track, and maybe one thing I'm missing in the album, again with the melancholy, but I feel like this track has the emotion that Elizabeth Fraser is missing a little bit in some of these tracks, especially the first half of the album. This track, the emotion is starting to be there for me. And then track number 7 called Ups. Strong one. Some really nice chord progression here. Solid, really good stuff. I think this one's a 7.25 stars out of 10. Really good stuff. And then track number 8, Eperdue. It takes some time to get there on this track for me. It does reward the patient listener. As Elizabeth Fraser, she really hits some special notes and some song and sort of nearing the end of this song, she really hits some special notes. And again, the emotion starts to be there for me. Can't quite say it's a very good track. It's right there, 6.75 for me. And then it comes to track number 9, my favorite song on the album, Treasure Hiding. I like the sort of cloudy, sort of opening where it just kind of holds you in suspense for almost 2.5 minutes. And knowing how much I like this song and knowing where it gets to, you just kind of relish that enjoyment of knowing where it's going to go to and enjoying that kind of little bit moodier start, and you just know where it's going to go. And it's just, her singing in the song is just angelic. Some of the notes on here, some of the background sounds good. Like, this is one of the only tracks that I can recall that has like some background noise in it. I wouldn't say noise. It kind of, I wouldn't say it quite sounds like a background of a city or something like that, or a playground or something like that. But it does sound like there's I didn't quite turn it up really loud. It's very faint, but it does sound like there's some background sort of landscape or some sort of feeling like there's a little bit more I guess just background sound in here besides the music. It does feel like there's a little bit of background, which I think is very rare for Cocteau Twins song to sound like it's not done in a studio. Like, this one feels like it's almost like outside a little bit, if that makes sense. Kind of different, but just the layering of her vocals in the song. This song is magical. Every time I hear this song, I just bathe in the beauty, knowing where it's going to go, and it just, this song can bring me to tears. It's just beautiful. It's just wow. It's just amazing. This song in track number 2, I get stuck on, constantly on repeat, and a lot of times I don't even hear the other songs on the album. I just go to my 2 favorites. And that's the funny thing about this album, and maybe other people feel that way as too. Most of the other albums, all the other albums, I feel like I can play all the way through. And this one I can too if I force myself to, but in some ways I just go to track 2 and go to track 9 and continually repeat these because they're so much better that I think personally for me than the other tracks. I give this one a 9 out of 10. I think it's one of their best. I think it's probably competing for a top 10 Cocteau Twins song of all time for me, which is saying a lot. I love Treasure Hiding. It's just beautiful. It's magical. It's just an amazing track. I love it. And then track number 10 is the one I was talking about earlier, Seekers Who Are Lovers. Again, it feels like Elizabeth Fraser is telling something, like telling how it is in this song, like she's coming to some sort of realization, but we'll never know, because we can't, understand the lyrics or even kind of gauge what she's feeling. But she does feel like she's understanding maybe the relationship and then getting back to, getting back with Robin and creating an album and sort of having a deeper understanding or a next level understanding of their relationship and also probably feeling like she's over him in some ways because you never quite know you're over somebody until you're in their presence, right? Like, like if you've had a relationship with somebody and even a baby with them, I can't even imagine how close you must feel to that person. So not being around them and sort of moving on to somebody else and then coming back 3 years later and spending time with them and trying to work on something or work together on something must be really hard, but at least, and I feel like in the song she feels like, okay, I'm over it. This isn't my past now. Cocteau Twins is my past. Although I'm doing this music now, I feel like all the drama that was involved with having a relationship and trying to create art and do a job as well is probably in my past. So I think just the way she sings this, I feel like she has this like realization on it. And, considering if they did the tracks in order, maybe they did, I don't know, but that even makes more sense because the way track 9 and 10 sort of, are at the trail end of 8 tracks that are very much like the rest of Cocteau Twins sounds, and then 9 and 10 are just a little bit different for different ways. But, I do very much wish track number 9 was track number 10. Treasure Hiding should be the last track of this album. I think it would have left the album on a high mark. I think in some ways, if it was you just listened to the album and that was the last song that you heard, I think that would be an amazing ending to the albums of their career. But in some ways, Seekers Who Are Lovers, it even says it on the title, Seekers Are Lovers. She might be, a lot of times their song titles don't quite make sense, but Seekers Who Are Lovers, that's got to mean something. And if that's their old relationship and she's seeking, somebody else out and she had that understanding and now she's over him and she's telling it like it is, it could very well be about their relationship. And so it's a strange ending to an album, if you try to get into the emotional baggage or impact of the album, I should say. But I still think it's a strong song. It's 6 3/4 stars. Not quite to the level of consistency with a lot of albums from Cocteau Twins. A lot of times I have like 3 or 4 songs in the 8s, maybe even 5, like the last couple albums. I think in Heaven Las Vegas and Cocteau and 4 Calendar Cafe, I probably had 4 to maybe even 6 tracks in the 8s and above. Here I only have 2. But those 2 are really high ones. But I still think the album's just barely, looking at my score here, just barely squeaks into the 70s, and I give it a 70 out of 100. And it's mostly because of those 2 really strong tracks. Those really help it. Because it was kind of, without those 2 tracks, the album's in the low 60s. So I still think it's a good album, but it's on the low side. But considering those 2 additions on the track, it really barely pushes it up with my score and averages a 70.5. So I give it a 70 out of 100. Really good stuff. Again, there's a little bit of confliction, I feel like, with some of these songs sounding a little bit like a repetition of 4 Calendar Cafe and Heaven Las Vegas. There's a little bit feeling like these are kind of leftover tracks in a ways, and maybe these are sort of lingering ideas of 4 Calendar Cafe at the end when they sort of got together, and maybe these were some tracks that didn't quite make it to that album and ones that they were sort of working on after that album, so they were sort of in that vein. But there is a feeling of kind of a leftover 4 Calendar Cafe songs that didn't quite make it. But still a very worthy album. It squeaks into the very good range. So having said all that, and I still get a 70, just shows you how much I like Cocteau Twins and how great they are. But I'd love to know your opinion of Milk and Kisses, a very highly contested album. A lot of people think it's their worst. A lot of people think it's underrated. It's, it could be either way for a lot of people. I find it, it's going to be interesting to see, saying all this, and then it still could be the lowest rated album. So maybe that's the ironic thing about me scoring Cocteau Twins is versus a lot of other albums. Instead of feeling like or finding out which is the best album, might be actually more interesting to see which one I like the least. Is there an album that I like lower than Milk and Kisses? And it's going to be Garland's Head Over Heels, Treasure, Victorialand? I don't know. I don't, it's going to be tough. But I think they'll be above this. So I would say that for sure. I would think most of those are going to be in between 75 and 100, or 74 and 100. In between 74 and 80, I feel like, maybe 82, somewhere in that range. Because I don't think I like any of the first 4 albums better than Bluebell Knoll. And I'll say that lightly just because from a production standpoint, from an edgy standpoint, I do like the earlier sound a lot better than the more polished sound in general, although I think Heaven Las Vegas is the best sounding album. I do have a special connection with Bluebell Knoll as far as the melancholy feel. There's songs on Bluebell Knoll that just bring me to tears. Unfortunately, that's the lowest rated album of the previous three that I rated it, and which kind of surprised me because I really like Bluebell Knoll. But there's some songs towards the end that just don't quite hit for me. And the other thing about Bluebell Knoll is I do have to re-rate that album, because there was a time in the first like 2 months where I was doing this channel where I was rating the songs 1 through 5 with intervals of quarter points in each, but I switched it to 1 through 10 because I feel like that's more accurate. So that one might get a little bit more extra points because I feel like something is, that's why I changed the scoring, because something that's a 3 out of a 10, I feel like, in a strange way, I feel like 6 out of 10 is more accurate than 3 out of 10. I don't know. It just has more of a spread on the scoring and just allows me for more, I guess, differentiation of tracks when you're scoring them. I just feel better about it. I don't know if it really makes sense, because technically from a math standpoint it's still kind of the same, but I do feel like there's a little bit more accuracy in 1 through 10, so that's why I switched it. And considering the way if you look at my scoring down below in the notes section, if you look at how I score the albums, there is a method to the madness as far as like what I say about, conversationally, like saying a track is a 5 out of 10. I would say that's pretty good. A 4 is okay. 6 is good. 7 is very good. 8 is excellent. 9 is a classic. Really hard to have a 10, but that would be obviously perfect, if you could say that. So it's more conversational. So I felt like with 3 and 4, like going from, I guess 3 is very good to very good, and then 3 would be good, and then 4 would be excellent. I felt like I wanted something a little bit more, some extra points in there. So there's a lot of tracks that I think I rated on Bluebell Knoll, which were probably 3 to 3.5, maybe even 4. Which, if I give it a 4 on an 8, I think there might be some opportunity where I may have given it an 8.5 or 8.25. And there's some extra points in there, extra scoring in there that might have affected why it's 74. Because I do feel like it's probably a little closer to 77 or 78 if I'm being more accurate with that album. So that's going to factor in with the long run of scoring those other 4 albums when I do my top, when I rate all the albums in a row, which I do want to do. I have the box set up there of Cocteau Twin CDs. I do want to do a top favorite single tracks or, B-sides. I want to take all those singles and do my top probably favorite 20 of those. I do want to do like a top 20 or 30 favorite Cocteau Twins all time. So I do want to finish it with a couple lists, but I'll do that after I rate the next 4 albums. And that's my thoughts on Milk and Kisses. Yeah, love to know your thoughts on Milk and Kisses by Cocteau Twins from 1996. I give it a 70 out of 100. If there's something you'd like me to review in a future video, my email is down below. Just message me. I'd love to know what you would like me to review for a future video. Appreciate it, and we'll see you on the next video.